Welcome, another episode of a podcast. Your host Stephen Maxted, and today we have Hanny Mehari with Hannymobile. But Hanny, you do more than that, so we'll get into it today. Excited to have you on the episode. I know we had some mutual connections from some other folks we had on the episode. Just trying to line up a time to get you on. So thanks for making a minute for us. I know you're busy running around quite literally. Some days I see posts from you. You're literally delivering phones and making sure people are connected in the world. And yeah, you're also helping out in the community. So I'm excited to chat more about what you're doing, how you're having an impact. And yeah, let's throw it over to you, Hanny. Tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about yourself, where you've been, where you're at, and where you're heading with all your adventures.
no, thanks for having me on, Steven. I appreciate it, man. How this came about was through another mutual friend who's Steve Sedka. He put us
Yes.
together, and then this magic happened. So it's about friendships and people. So yeah, man, my name is Hanny Mehari. I'm the owner of Hannymobile. We specialize in buying and selling and fixing phones here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I've been doing that for the last 2 years. And then the past, I probably say 6 months ago, I got into wholesaling. So we do a lot of business to business transactions.
Cool.
Just helping out a lot of business owners here in Winnipeg who are also in the same business, like selling phones and providing them electronics for them to resell as well. So that's a little bit about me. And then also too, the past, if I say in the summertime, I got into real estate investing, wholesaling. That's another thing that I got into as well too. And I'm
Cool.
always the type of person that if I see opportunity, like for example, if I see someone else making money in a business, I'm like, hey, let me give that a try. And so that's kind of how I discovered that. And then I realized I have because I'm into sales naturally. I know like people's skills, and so acquisitions, getting into that side of things, and being able to find distressed properties. Another thing that I got into, and I just kind of just was like, let me give it a try, and then was able to close 2 deals. So that's another thing that I'm also kind of passionate about a little bit on the side, because you don't want to put too much focus on different businesses. So I like to put one focus, which is Handy Mobile for now, and then in the future, if I want to get into real
Right.
estate and do that, I'll have that back in my mind. And then I'm also big into the community too. Uh, I have this mantra called "Each One Teach One." I believe it's important that if you get knowledge and information, being able to pass that knowledge to somebody else, right? Ultimately, the transfer knowledge, right? Because we don't want to like get information and then don't give it to nobody, right? So my work in the community started literally, yeah, at the Aikens Business Center, which is another co-working center, and I just seen like a space where entrepreneurs would come together, and I'm like talking about business and that kind of thing. I'm like, let me start doing this, bringing people together to talk about entrepreneurship. I actually got that concept from reading a book called by Keith Ferrazzi called "Never Eat Alone." He talked about how
Okay.
and most people do networking wrong, which is like they go to networking events and only to connect. But he said you got to be a connector. You got to be the person that's going to connect people to opportunities and relationships, right? So that's kind of how I see the world of like people, and I mean, it's not just about getting contact. It's about how do you help that person get, I mean, an opportunity, or if I connect you with somebody else that's also in business
Right.
and be able to get certain product, whatever it is, I mean, relationships that you guys can build. So that's how I see my work in the community. And then I was able to do that. And we were able to, I think, bring so many leaders in the community. For example, Maddie from Mad Thompson, who was social media marketing agency with Mad, right? And then we had Ryan, me a CFO, and so different people, real estate investors come into the community and be able to give their knowledge and information, right? So people came and they got a lot of information. And so that's kind of my work, a little bit of doing that. And now we're going to bring it back hopefully this year, working on different things, the planning a little bit changed. So that's my passion, is ultimately to help people. I think that's what I'm here to do, and just become just be an inspiration for the next generation ultimately.
Awesome. That's a great recap. I know we got a lot,
Thanks,
a
bro.
lot of stuff going on in there, but how did your entrepreneurial journey get started?
Yeah, bro, that's a good one. I don't know if you want me to take you back when I was 15, but
Whatever
that's
makes
where
sense. Yeah.
yeah, that's, I mean, I didn't even know I was getting into entrepreneurship at that age. But yeah, growing up, I was a tall, skinny, I was a skinny kid. When I was about 6'3" or so in high school, and so I've always found my passion in like playing basketball and sports. But I
Yeah.
realized that I wasn't good academically. So how I kind of discovered my way into, at that time I was reselling shoes and video games, and I just always seen it like, I was buying a lot of things growing up. You know how you, when you're a kid, you buy shoes, you buy video games. So I looked at it like, hey, I'm buying all this stuff. Why not try to see if I can sell it, on the marketplace and see people want to buy it. So a little
Yeah.
bit of my entrepreneurship journey started there when I was a kid, and my mom wanted me to actually finish school and go become a doctor. That was ultimately the goal for her because she was like, hey, man, you're wasting. You got to stay focused. So my upbringing uh, uh, was not the greatest as far as like the environments that I grew up in, right? So I've seen a lot of different things growing up, whether it's gangs and seeing my friends get into drugs and that kind of thing. So I've always used like the curiosity, me being a kid playing basketball and getting into
Right.
just trying different things. I never looked at it like, hey, I just need to just do one thing. So that's how it started, just to kind of like on a side thing. And I was doing reselling for about 6 or 8 months when I was a kid, but then I stopped because I wanted to go to just finish my high school and pretty much wanted to get a scholarship to go play basketball, and so that's what I actually did, and I was able to do that. But so yeah, my entrepreneurship journey has taken different routes. That was me doing when I was a kid, and then when I really got into it was through this was in 2019, or the pandemic happened. So as I got older, I realized like, hey, you know what, things are starting to really changed, because now when I was a kid, I did discover those things, but when I got older, I realized, I went back into just doing my old habits. Because I think when you're a kid, it feels like you're just running on a 100-mile race. You're running so fast, you don't even know, time doesn't slow down, right? I think that's what kind of happened to me when I
Right.
was a kid, and then I realized when I got older, this was I think I'm 25 now, so I don't know if that's I kind of discovered things really early on. I found out that at 2019, when the pandemic kind of happened, I discovered Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is, I think that book kind of transformed my mindset into kind of the person that I am today, into getting
Right.
into personal development and just reading books and figuring out different things. So in that journey, I got into like stock market investing and trading.
Hmm.
So ultimately, that's kind of where everything kind of started. I did that for about a couple of years, and then I looked at the market on a different level, in a sense where I was trying to figure out how do companies actually make money. So looking at balance sheets, PE ratios, the stuff that's kind of boring. Most people don't really look at, right? So that's a lot.
Yeah.
So instead of me choosing the college route in 2019, I decided to just go focus all lock in on the market and pretty much just put my towards that. And so I did that, but then I realized that it was a tough game to play because the markets are not easy. Trading and investing and make money every day it's completely different. So
Yeah.
during that phase, I just kind of really just discovered myself even more, like getting into personal development, like reading books and just kind of just figuring out what I was gonna do next. And then 2023 is when I got into Hannymobile, which is now the cell phone company, and it goes back to when I was a kid. I always seen, I had this curiosity mindset. Like if I have things laying around the house, I'm always like, how do I turn them into profit, right? That's kind of how I feel like I always kind of see things. I don't
Yeah.
want to be like a consumer. I want to be able to, take something for $100 and see if I can sell it for 200. What I mean? That's kind of the mindset that I had there. And also, Hanny Mobile started like that. It was a bunch of phones that I had laying around at home, because a lot of time people think that in order to start a business, you need like $100,000 or $50,000, right? But it just
Hmm.
comes down to like, how hungry are you? Because if you're hungry, for sure you're gonna succeed in any field, right? It's about the person who's willing to
Yeah.
put in the work. And so for me, I was like, okay, let me see if I can get into this business. And I think at that time, how I stumbled upon it was just I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I was seeing people make money on Shopify and people buying things from garage sales. Gary Vee was one of my biggest inspirations too to getting into that
Oh.
100%.
Yeah.
So when I seen him talk about that, he's like, "What you need to do is you got to go to garage sales, pick up laptop and just sell them. People are gonna buy them." Like, bro, Gary, this stuff doesn't work. I'm like, let me give it a try. So I did that and just went all in, man, and was able to sell a couple phones that I had in my house. I had like a iPhone 8 and an iPhone like 6S or whatever at that time. So these were
Yeah.
phones that were like very low in demand because they're not really like expensive devices. So I took those phones. I'm like, hey, let me sell them on the marketplace and see if people want to buy them. So that's what I did. I sold both those phones, and combined that generated me $365. So I took that money and just started, instead of I never put my own money into it. I just kept scaling that business with just that 365, and that grew to $3,000 in my first month, to then just 5K. And so it just kept doubling. I never just kept reinvesting back into the business. So because I learned different principles from just reading certain books to always reinvest back into the business. So a lot of kind of where I've been through is just from just learning certain principles, and that was able to help me out into Hannymobile.
Very awesome, man. It's cool that you took, yeah, the information reading in theory and applied it to make it practical. A lot of that's
Yeah,
the misstep a lot of the time. When talk
exactly.
the talk, but taking action is one of the biggest gaps, right? Within folks. That's really awesome. And why mobile? Why phones?
Yeah, that's a good one, bro. People ask me that all the time. I tell people because like the reason why phones work is because people need phones more than transportation nowadays. I think you're seeing it. People are
Yeah,
always on their phone, whether it's social media,
totally.
they're just scrolling all the time, or they need to make a phone call, right? And then another thing too about phones is that people break their phones all the time, right? So when I got
Yeah,
into it, I didn't know I met like the first three customers I met, they all told me the same thing. Hey, I got a bunch of broken phones. I want to sell them to you. I'm like, wait, this is the third person. You broke your phone again. So people are just like they're not. It's because it's very fragile, right? The way the iPhones are set up, they
yeah,
can if you drop them, it's broken, right? So that's kind of where I realized I'm like, okay, there's something in this business. So if I can buy these broken phones, if I can learn how to fix phones, maybe I can also make money that way too. So there's
cool.
different ways to offer a service when it comes to reselling, you know what I mean, or just the sell the phone business. Different ways to get it. And so for me, I never looked at it like just, hey, I'm just gonna buy and sell. Why not also learn
Yeah,
how to do repairs? So along my journey, I was able to actually learn how to do repairs through watching YouTube videos and kind of getting into that route as well too. So I was
cool,
able to
man.
do that, and then so it's been pretty good, man.
That's awesome. What's the number one? I mean, I've seen a fair share of broken phones, but what do you see? What's the most frequent thing that you see in terms of phone? Like, what kind of damage are you working on? What are people doing out there?
Oh man, people are breaking everything, man. The back is broken, the front, the camera is smashed. I had this
Mm,
one guy tell when the guy called me, he's like, I'm like, my phone broke. I'm like, what happened, man? He's like, my ex, she got mad at me and she threw my phone and she tossed it, and I need to go
yeah,
to work tomorrow. I'm like, hey man, I completely understand. I can help you, man. Bring it to Hanny Mobile. We'll get it done for you. So there's incidents where because it's a want, right? People like if they can't get the resolve, they can't go to work. So that guy,
right.
he was like, so there's incidents like that happen. So just make sure you get with the right person. That's all I can say there. you know.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I've heard a couple of situations where people, nowadays have kids and they're more like saving up their money and stuff to buy a phone ahead of getting a vehicle now. So it's funny to use that as a
Yeah.
comparison. I've heard of that before. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh no, like phones, more important." And I mean, some, yeah, I mean, it is legit, obviously, but I can totally understand that because you don't have to drive somewhere to interact, so to say, with them. I would say back in my time, I was still saving up for like a vehicle because I was like, you need a mode of transportation to get around for different sports stuff. I would say it was almost kind of necessary for me to get at the time, but I can see that transition happen already. And it's not just a want though, too. It's like a need, like you were saying.
Hmm.
Everyone has at least one, probably, and almost from like a young age now. So it's like, you're looking at probably one per person per household. So you have a house full of phones. Not many people
Hmm.
even have kept their main line anymore. It's all mobile, and yeah, if that thing goes down, like, what are you doing? Like, a lot of people even use it as a payment method. Swiping a
Yeah.
card or whatever is now in the phone. It's like in your wallet. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
necessity.
And the thing is too, the phones, Apple has created this ecosystem, I like to call it, because people when they upgrade, they keep their phones 3 to 4 years, right? So
Yeah,
sometimes people have came to me from like an iPhone SE, which is like 10 years old, right? It's like the
right.
first model of like of iPhones. People are keeping iPhone SEs, 11s, 12s in their households, right? They don't know what to do
Yeah,
with them, so they're gonna sell them to make their money, right? So
yeah,
there's so many different ways to go about it. People can have it doesn't I don't know how many phones or whatever electronics they got laying around the house. Because I'm also too I also help people get into the phone business. That's another thing we could talk about as well too. So I tell
cool.
people like it's not about wanting to make extra cash, but it's about being resourcefulness. Like start with what you have, right, and then work your way up that way. You don't need to go and invest so much money. You just look around your house literally and pick up items that are there and just start see if you can if you can flip them or turn them into profit, right? So there's different ways to go about them, and I think it's not just reselling phones primarily. but it's pretty much everything. I think we could truly look at that, but I think iPhones are really just so in demand because it's like it's a I call it recession proof business. They're never gonna run out of business. I think even if you look at their business model, they're
Yeah.
worth like $3 trillion at one point. So it's just like it's just gonna and the thing is so people are gonna keep buying it because it's just I think it's more of how it makes you feel. People are just like naturally driven to iPhones because they're just like either my friend bought an iPhone 11 Pro Max or a 15 Pro
Right.
Max. I also want to buy a 15 Pro Max. So it's not because the camera is good or because the apps is just like, oh, Steven has that phone, the 16 Pro Max. I want a 16 Pro Max. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, keeping up with the Joneses. You know what I mean? People sometimes do that, and I always advise like, hey, if your phone makes a call and if you got a good camera, you can go from a 13 Pro to a 14 Pro, sure, but what's the big difference really? Yeah, so that's kind of how I really see it.
No, it's a good point. There is a little bit of hey, yeah, I got a new phone. Now everyone else needs a new one or upgrade kind of thing. But
Yeah,
the interesting point about Apple for sure. They certainly, I mean, like I'm part of that. Apple got a lot of the products and stuff like that. But there are other great products out there for other brands and stuff like that. Do you help service all brands of phone out there? Maybe just ask this one, or is it mostly focused on
yeah.
Apple?
Of course, I think it's all preferences. Some people like iPhones, some people like
Right.
Samsungs,
Yeah. Yeah.
people want iPads. It's like when you go to an Apple store, people tell me like, why, like, how come you sell laptops and all? I'm like, because it's preferences. People want Apple watches, they want laptops, you want everything. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
whatever they can see, they can get their hands on, they want to buy. So that's kind of how I see
Yeah.
it. It's not one item. It's just more about like being able to attract more customers ultimately, right, to the product that you're selling because Apple does it at a very massive level. So I think that's kind of what it is. It just depends on what people really want, and then we just kind of work with them, and then we get the product, and we gotta keep the customer because we both know customer is king. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about like, okay, so what are all the services and stuff that you guys offer through Hannymobile? It's like fixing phones, it's selling phones, accessories. What's all involved?
Yeah, yeah. So pretty much, like I told you in the beginning, I was just buying and selling, and then I realized
Yeah.
the demand picked up when people were telling me, hey, like, hey, my phone is broken. So I'm like, okay, I gotta learn how to do repairs. So I got into getting into repairs in my third month into the business. So now we offer after 6 months or so, I was able to kind of master the repair business, and then I got different partners that also do repairs. So we offer
Cool.
repairs, buy and sell, and then accessories as well too. So pretty much anything you can name, man. Like I just feel like, not sticking to one thing, but just keep evolving over time, because and ultimately the product is always key because without the product, then there's no money being transacted, right? So being able to
Yeah.
build relationships with different people to get the product, So that's ultimately how I look at it.
Awesome. Was yeah, I mean, people are gonna keep dropping their phone no matter what.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah,
the end
yeah,
of the
man.
day, I mean, like, can we live, where people slip, fall, unfortunately, in our kind of winter climate we're just getting out of. Um, do you have a lot of repeat customers, like people that just like notoriously break their phone?
That's a good question. Yeah, man. Like that's where the follow up comes in. You got to follow up with them
Yeah.
every 30 days, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I call it it's a buyback. It's a buyback business, man. Like people are always
Yeah.
looking to just break in and to come back again. It's just like it's a habit. But some people, yeah, you need those customers to come back 100%. So got different systems set up where that's definitely being taking place where people are gonna come to you one time. But how do you keep them coming back again, right? So being able to have a follow up
Okay.
is going to be key, especially in this business, because like I said, people are going to go from a 13 to a 14. So how do you stay ready? You know that, especially with the iPhone, September, the new phone comes out. So me not knowing
Right.
that, I prepared ahead of time. I'm like, hey, are you looking to sell, right? Because now they want to get to a 16 Pro Max, whatever it is. So and then they want to go from a right. So there's always changes coming in the market. Um,
Mhm.
and then yeah, I think people it says on average people like flip their phones every 3 years or something. There's a number out there that Apple has.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I mean, like looking at those numbers, it's real stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. What would you say is like the most popular phone out there, like model and make that you
Yeah.
work on or see? And yeah.
That's a good one, man. I think it all depends on who you are. I think nowadays the 16 Pro, they got the new camera on the side now, right? That's kind of the new feature. That's kind of what they're
Yeah.
selling you now. That's like, but other than that, I think it's just speed as well too, right? I think the higher up you go, the
Yeah.
faster the phone really is, and then the battery health really, people like 100%, 88%, anything above 90, that's like really going to be important. Because
Yeah.
then if the battery is low, if you, especially if you use it a lot, it's going to decrease over time, right? So that's something that I've seen, and then it depends on kind of what your budget is. Some people have 200 bucks, right? They have 300 bucks. So I
Yeah.
kind of just work with people, knowing how much are they willing to what kind of budget are they in, and then we can work from there, right? Uh, I don't really advise like, hey, get the 16 Pro Max. Like, it's like it depends on what kind of person they are. If they're going from say for example, like an iPhone 12, then they want to upgrade to like a 15 Pro Max or a 16 because it's like 3-4 years ahead, right?
Right.
So
Right. Between their
that's
transition.
exactly. There's some people who go from like a SE I was telling you about in the beginning, right, which is
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
10-year model, to
Yeah.
now a 13. They feel like they're upgrading, right? So there's different
Yeah.
ways to kind of really go about it. So everybody's at a different stage, and so, but also too, don't sleep on Samsungs because the S24 and now the S25 Ultra that just came out looks pretty impressive too. So um preference really matters when it comes to people. Some people like Samsungs, for example, when I first got into the business, because I'm also from so I'm from Eritrea originally, my background, and I was born in Sudan, and so the culture that I'm from, we're accustomed to Samsungs. So the reason being is because
Interesting.
people who are back in Africa, they use Samsungs majority all over, whether it's Nigeria, Ghana, it depends on Eritrea, different places in the world. They want to use Samsung preferably because there's no like iCloud, it's unlocked a lot of times. So there's
Okay.
different preferences like that I've seen. And so me knowing that, I've had a lot of family members who reach out to me. They're like, "Hey, we want Samsungs." I'm like, "Why is that?" Because people back home are accustomed to Samsung. They don't have iPhones like over here, right? So
Interesting.
there's yeah. So there's different ways to go about it, and so people be like, "Oh, iPhone is the best." I'm like, "No, you're wrong, man. There's people who want Samsungs too." It's like,
Right.
so can you demand both customers, right? Can you attract both people? So but I think as far as like technology and like the camera wise, I think the S25 Ultra or S24 Ultra is pretty different, man. Because I've tested it out, and so I see what people are talking about. It's like they're just, I think Samsung was more of a, they're adapting more to the technology, right? They're getting you different features compared to iPhone is just pretty stagnant. They're giving you the same product every year, but people are
Yeah.
buying it because of the emotional attachment to the phone, right? So that's
Right.
kind of where I've seen when it comes to the Samsung market and the iPhone market.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that about different regions of the world, but it makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People
That's
buy
pretty
like, I have
interesting.
someone who buy like 50 phones off me from like Nigeria and then Philippines because we do a lot of overseas stuff. So
Okay.
they're buying a lot of phones to, for example, they want to resell back in Philippines or they want to resell back in Nigeria because the dollar, because it's worth more, right? Because if you buy it over here and you want to sell it over there, right, it's gonna cost more and more. So that's why I told you earlier I do wholesaling.
Interesting.
I work right now. We're working about 10 phone shops and then also two different people that are reselling overseas, like Nigeria and the Philippines and different places part of the world. And I've seen people be like, "Hey, I want to sell this back home because they know that the dollar back." Some people also use it as an investment mechanism as well too. So they'll sell phones back to the Philippines, and then once they go to the Philippines, they will be able to have whatever dollar that is in that currency, and then when they go there, they can go spend that money, and it's going to be worth more when they're going to travel or whatever it is. So different ways to look at it. You know what I mean? The dollar is definitely interesting when it comes to the Canadian market. So I have a guy who literally just looks at the conversion rate every time he's buying something. He's like, "Oh, the dollar is going up over here. Things are going expensive, right?" So it's very interesting when it comes to working with certain people and what kind of product they want. So I've kind of seen it all now. I've had actually someone buy a phone off me in the UK because it was so expensive in the UK. One of my friends, he's like, "Hey, I have a friend that wants to buy a phone, but she can't buy a phone over there." I'm like, "What kind of phone? A 14 Pro?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." It's like worth like over there. Say for example, if I'm selling it 700 over here, over
Yeah.
there it's like almost not $1,000, right? In their currency conversions. I'm like, That's ridiculous, man. So she's saving almost $400 from the phone because their dollar over there is, I'm guessing it's super, super competitive, or might be just so different ways to
Interesting.
look at it when it comes to the overseas market.
I had no idea that there was an international market
Oh
for
man,
phones,
it's
man.
big. It's big.
Seriously. No, I mean, I know
It's
that
big.
it is international, obviously, but I didn't
Yeah,
realize
yeah.
the trade that kind of exists actually within that space.
Oh
I
yeah.
had no idea. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
There's huh, that's super insightful.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
yeah, that's yeah, I've been an iPhone user. It was so funny as you were saying this though. I'm like, oh, it's such a headache when someone doesn't have an iPhone for the group chat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know you can use,
Yeah.
whatever,
And
but
another thing too about phones, like, yeah, you might have a phone, but most people, I guarantee you, they're not really truly using it to their full capabilities. Like, of course, yeah, social media, marketing, and that kind of thing, but
yeah,
some people don't even know where the settings are. Like, which is, I'm in the business for showing people how to like navigate and showing them like
right,
different features on the phone. Like, you tell them how many gigabytes does your phone have? I'm like, where do you check that? Like, what do you, right? So there's different ways. Like,
right,
you'd be surprised. Like, yeah, people have no idea what they're just buying the product, which is okay. But I tell them
yeah,
like, hey, this is what you got to do, right? And then two, another thing about phones is that there's a thing called IMEI number, which is it could tells you the make, the model, and if the device is stolen or has it been used somewhere else? Is it carrier unlocked, right? So we check different things when it comes to phones.
interesting,
There's a lot of behind the scenes that people don't know when before you're buying anything, because somebody sells you something, you don't want it to be blacklisted, right? So that's
right,
important when it comes to doing your research. That's where you have to be able to be an expert at that field, being able to like, hey, you're buying this product, understand what it is, right? Because a lot of times, so people say, for
yeah,
example, people want to get a good deal, right? I want to buy a 16 Pro Max. Okay, sure, you buy it, and then what
yeah,
happens, right? So because I've seen a lot of that happen where I've
yeah,
actually had a close friend who went on the market. He's like, I'm gonna go look for a phone, and I told him, hey, reach out to me if you need a phone. He's like, I'm gonna go on marketplace. He goes on marketplace. I think he found a 15 Pro Max, right? A brand new phone, whatever it was. I think
yeah,
that he was selling it for $500. He's like, oh, I'm getting a good deal. I'm like, okay. He doesn't want to listen to me, so he goes and buys the phone, and then he comes back. He's like, "Oh, it's not a real phone." I'm like, "There you go. It's actually a replica, right?" So
what?
he bought a replica 15 Pro Max, right, without even knowing it. So there's things like that
Yeah,
where you have to really be careful, because these phones are so. It's like with anything, it's like they're so like they look real, right? But without looking
yeah,
at the
yeah,
numbers, the serial number, the IMEI number, doing your research, that can be very hard, right? Even for example, like these AirPods, like if you got a bunch of AirPods, you can't even tell if it's real or fake. I think unless you go to Apple and actually buy it, if someone wants to sell you an AirPod, it's
yeah.
very hard like to figure out if it's real or fake. That's one thing that this one is probably the hardest one to really figure out. Oh, you got
Yeah,
one?
I have,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have AirPods or whatever, and I mean, they're
yeah,
real.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Florida.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So there's different products where it's like you really gotta be, you have to have like very good eyes and be able to know the product very well. Because sometimes I even like, oh, let me double check, let me see this, and oh, we can't buy this. It's not real, right? Because they think, oh, it's no, it's not. I bought it from somebody else, right?
oh my
So
God, I
there's
had
a lot of that going on, man. It's a big market, man. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah.
makes sense. Electronics. Actually, I had this experience. Yeah, talking about like saving a buck and how it's sometimes not worth it. Yeah, I was booking this flight and I could save like $40 by using this like tech, whatever it was called, something Sky. I won't, you know, totally drop the name. But anyways, it turned out to be like a complete scam. And if you look at their like, Google reviews or anything like that, it's like everyone listing off like scam, don't buy, blah blah blah. And I was
Hmm.
dumb. I think I saved $40 on this, and it turned out to be a complete scam. I had to like cancel the
Yeah.
card and stuff, but it was super interesting to go through that. Then I'm like, okay, never again am I trying to look for a deal to save $40. What a headache, because I had to rebook and I had to get down to this conference and stuff. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah. Last one on that one, because
yeah, for sure.
it gets very crazy. Because the thing is, especially nowadays, there's so much scam going on. Like, I think the phone calls, like, hey, I want to give you a bill discount, whatever it
Yeah,
is. Like, there's so many of that stuff. But
yeah.
on the
Sorry, Travis.
technology side of things, like Marketplace and Kijiji, or buying things online, people, there's a e-transfer scam where people will literally tell you, oh,
Yeah,
I want to buy this product. Okay, sure. I'll pay it to you. How are you gonna pay? Email transfer. So then what they'll tell you is send me your email, right? So once they send you the email, they're gonna send you an email transfer, but it's not actually a real email transfer. So you'll get your email once you put your information. I had a friend who actually lost a lot of money by putting his info, and then they were able to take like $5,000 from his bank account. So there's incidents like that when I'm like, yeah, it can get real. So someone who's, for example, someone who's older who doesn't know technology very well, things like that are gonna happen unless someone is giving them some type of knowledge and information about kind of what's going on, right? So when people are going
Yeah.
into selling their phones online, I always tell them, hey, yeah, sure, you can sell it to that person. They might give you top dollar for your phone, but just remember what it comes with, right? So that's why I always advise, like, if you can go sell it to us and we'll pay you top dollar for your device, right? Instead of having to go and, we deal with like 50, 20 people on the marketplace and have to go through that process, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of scammers out there, man. So I always tell people like, hey, just be careful. And I've seen it so much, especially now because I'm in different Facebook groups now,
Mhm.
where I'm literally seeing people getting robbed and different things in the business. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's crazy stuff. So that's kind of, we'll talk a little bit about wins and losses. I've had that happen to me in the business where I actually talked about. I did a whole YouTube video on this where I literally got robbed and I lost like $30,000, and then I got robbed to a gun to my face where I almost got killed, almost shot me pretty much. Uh, Not to say like thank God nothing happened there, but I got pretty much set up by a friend, my mutual friend, who wanted to buy phones. Um, and then me, especially, I think this was about my 5th month into the business of Hannymobile. Things were really kicking up, and people really seeing my ads online. And when you start to promote your stuff, and you're like, "Hey, we offer buy and sell. We sell phones, 15 Pro
Right.
Maxes, all that stuff." People are gonna reach out to you, right? It's like anything, but I realized like, hey, let me help him out. He's a family member. I know him since we were kids, right? So there's that mutual connection. And
Shit.
yeah, man, literally told me to go meet some friends, right? And we went and at a public location, and then boom, next thing you know, 2 guys are robbing me, and they're like, "Give me everything you got." So at that time, because I was typically in the phone business, uh, when I'm on the road, I have a lot of phones, right? That's a mistake that I made in the beginning. I used to carry a lot of phones with me, and I would walk around and to meet customers and stuff. And at that time, I was just fortunate I had 30 phones, right? And so when I say 30,000, a lot of that money was into phones, right? So
Right.
when they came and then they yeah, there was just, everything was, looks like everything was gonna go all good, and the next thing you know, they took my bag, and then he put the gun to my face. I'm like, oh, this is real stuff, right? So at that moment, I thought about it. Okay, is it actually worth it to go and to retaliate, to fight this guy over phones, right? So that's why now I think about it completely different, in the sense where it's
Holy
just,
crap.
at the end of the day, they're just phones. They're not really, my life was way more important than just me having to sell this guy a product. So I told him take everything, and then I was able to go home, and that's when I really realized like, oh, this business is very interesting, in a sense where now as you start to get more demand, more people know you. You got to be more careful. You have to know who you're dealing with, right? So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter who it is now. If it's family, if you're a close friend, if I've known you for 20 years, I don't care. What I mean? We gotta follow different principles and different guidelines that I gotta have with the business. Uh, so yeah, that could definitely happen. And the unfortunate part too is like it's your own community, it's your own people. Like it's like pretty much
Mhm.
a black person on a black person crime. Like I'm black and you're black and we're both going against each other. Like it's like that's kind of that was kind of the thing that really made me kind of question a lot of things. And I'm like, you can't really like,
Right.
it doesn't matter who you are. It can happen to anybody, but at the end of the day, you have to really watch out and be careful with who you're dealing with, then, because it's not worth it to lose your life over some phones or
No,
uh,
definitely
uh,
not.
offering a service, right? So that's probably that. I would probably say that was probably my biggest lesson, because I don't look at it as a loss. It was the biggest lesson that I learned, and in that transaction, it truly made me the person I am today. Like that's when I started actually discovering more of myself, and then because I think for about a month I kind of just stopped the business for a bit, because I was actually traumatized for a little bit. I was just like
Yeah.
I couldn't even go outside and be like, oh, that person might try to do something to me, right? So I was just like, let me just sit back and just observe and talk about this. So I actually reached out to one of my mentors. Uh, and I told him, should I keep doing this or should I just go back to working a regular 9 to 5 job? He's like, hey, do what your intuition tells you, right? Like if this is what you want to do and this is what you want to pursue, and you know, just think about it. Look at it as a lesson, and make sure it doesn't happen again. And then,
Right.
because at the end of the day, money is a tool ultimately. We can always make money back, right? It's not like, if you have the skill sets and you have the determination and the will, you can make that money back. So, yeah, man, I went back into the market. I did the fundamental stuff, how I got here in the beginning, and then I was able to make that money back and some more. So it's like wins and losses are part of the journey. So, but you never quit. Like Hermodi talks about, you never lose until you quit, right? So
Yeah.
it's a great reminder today. I was like, I can't stop here because if I do, then I'm gonna go back to working for somebody else, and then I'm gonna look back and be like, oh, I'm gonna blame myself for not going after it. Be like, oh, I should have done this, and I stopped because this happened. It's like, no, man, this is
Damn.
part of the game. So, you know,
That's wild. I don't
yeah,
think
yeah,
many people have that experience in their line of work.
yeah. So, yeah, man, it's
Yeah.
it's, it's kind of like I told you earlier too, like kind of like how I grew up and just different things that I've seen in my upbringing. Yeah, it's very sad, man, because I actually grew up on the north side of Winnipeg, so I've seen a lot of crazy stuff growing up, man. Like I've had about like 12 friends that passed away. Like majority of them go to jail. So I've seen a lot of things growing up, right? It's not like I've just kind of just I'm not accustomed to pain. Like I'm not gonna tell you that's kind of normal, but the community that
Yeah.
I grew up in, it's unfortunately that's kind of what we have this mechanism of like, hey, I think a lot of it has to do with influence. I think influence is a massive
Mhm.
breaker to
Yeah.
environment and the people what they're doing. A lot of it comes from the rap music. A lot of it comes from childhood trauma, right? People how their upbringing is, right? Because where I grew up, it was a very low income household. We didn't have a lot of money, so people are kind of similar. So now they got to make money, so they got to be on the streets, right? So
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that stuff going up, and for me, I always looked at it like, okay, how do I not become that, right? How do I not make sure that doesn't happen to me? Because now, if I do go through that rabbit hole, then what happens to my family in the future that I'm gonna have, right? So I've always looked at it like, I think entrepreneurship truly saved me in the sense where if I didn't get into personal development and becoming the man I am today, I don't think I'd be here, right? I think that's why I tell people like like if you want to transform, like it starts with your mindset and then it starts with working on yourself because then everything else it happens naturally, right? I think that's one thing that I've realized and you can't really teach that. It's just like you have to go through the phases. And so
Yeah.
for me, that's kind of how because I've seen it all. It's not like I didn't want to go through that life, but I had to. I've seen my mom struggle growing up, and so a lot of my tribulations has came from that because I've studied my past, right? So we look at what Tony Robbins talks about, like if you want to change your future, whatever, it's the programming that you have to change, right? So it starts with, you know, the things that you brought up, the things that the pain that you go through growing
Yeah.
up, and so how do you change that trajectory for the next generation? So for me, it's like it started with me saying this is enough, and I have to change it because we can't go back to doing gangs and violence, and that's not what it was. And so
Yeah.
entrepreneurship and ownership was key for me because I realized, okay, this is what it was. And then growing up too, I'm not gonna lie, I listened to a lot of rap music. Nipsey Hussle was actually one of my biggest inspirations into like getting into business and entrepreneurship. He's another actually rapper from my country as well too that passed away. Um, so he had this message of like the marathon and pretty much like knowing that you don't have to rob and kill. You can also become an owner and build something, right, and sell products and people can buy it, right. You don't have to like do the conditional norm of people just going through the same cycle. So
Right.
there's so much reprogramming that you have to do, and it starts with the mind. I think that's one thing that I realized, especially now, and that's what I'm doing a lot of. So my work in the community, my work with Hannymobile, I feel like it reflects a lot of that, and sometimes you can't, like I said, you can't win them all. Like you're gonna have those people who are gonna hate on you, like I told you, and like that incident that happened to me. And
Yeah.
but I just looked at it like, hey, it's a lesson. Just got to keep moving forward, man. You can't. It's just it's trauma and it's happening over and over again. And I just wish that one day we can stop, you know, uh, 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 killing each other or stop trying to compete with one another when we can work together, right? So I see a lot of that, especially in the Winnipeg market, where you see a lot of people who are in similar businesses or who are in different businesses, and they're like, oh, that person is doing this, but you realize like, there's nothing new under the sun. We know business has been happening for the last decades, right? People are making money with collaboration. People are doing stuff working together, right? So it's about, because you don't have to get 100% of the pie. You can get 50%, 30%. You know, that's one thing I realize now. Like, and that's why I do wholesaling, because I know that if I can buy a product for 200 and sell it to somebody for 250, and if they can go back on the market and sell it for 400 bucks, it's okay. You know, I've already helped that person, and that's how I think we create this ecosystem of like a win-win. You know, everybody makes money, right? Because then if I just get a bunch of product and uh, I don't move them to different people, then it just becomes I'm only the one gonna make the money. Then it's very hard to eat like that, especially in this world where if we know money is a transaction, right? So the more people we can help, the more money we're gonna make in the long run. So that's kind of how I see it, a little bit of like
Oh,
dynamic of money and people.
I think it makes a lot of sense to anybody. And thanks for sharing those stories.
Yeah,
It's like definitely the
sure.
scarcity versus abundance mindset ultimately, right? Like, and seeing it from a
Yeah,
place where you're at now. I think that's a really great story, and sharing that you've had kind of, yeah, the simplifying it, but the light bulb turn on to be like, hey, I can, do something different versus maybe what the circumstances or environment are. Cause you are the environment. What is it? You're the product of the 5 people you hang out with the most, ultimately. Right. And you see that time and time again, between the folks, yeah, people spend time with. So, yeah, pretty
100%.
interesting. So that's good for you, on that end of things. And honey, what's, okay, so well, obviously someone can go on Google Hannymobile, but and to find you, what are some of the good
Yeah,
ways to connect with you and follow the story, and or if someone has broken their phone and they need it fixed tomorrow,
yeah.
kind of thing. What's the process? How do people find you?
Yeah, so you can go on my website, www.hannymobile.com. And then you can find me on all social medias, Hanny Mehari, everywhere, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I really just been the past couple, probably say a year now, I've really been focusing more on the personal brand and just putting myself out there. Um, just kind of, like I said, documenting my process and just kind of where I was and to where I am today, with the phone business, with real estate and the community. So I've always looked at it like, hey, I can share my message with people and they can resonate with it, because it's not like a gimmick. So I didn't just wake up and, you know, this stuff actually happened. So I
Yeah,
think that's a misconception about social media. A lot of times you see a lot of people, they're just, the other side is like, oh, everything is all good. Well, it's not all good. You know,
yeah,
it's not all good. There's those moments where you feel like, oh, you know, there's gonna be ups and downs. It's part, like, part of the journey. So that's kind of what I like to share about. And I talk a lot about my car getting into a hit and run, and my partner issues, the investments that I lost. So a lot of the things that I'm sharing is like things that are actually happening, because I feel like uh, transparency breeds accountability. So if you're transparent, people are gonna want to trust you more, right? So that's kind
mhm,
of how I really see the world of like social media. So I don't go on there, talking about flexing, whatever it is. It's just like more of
yeah,
a, I want to become an inspiration for the next generation that's to come. They can
yep,
look at my story to like, oh, this guy actually started with nothing and was able to get into a business and establish that and help people. And so that's kind of where I really see life, is just like it's I found myself more of a, I want to live an inspired life. I want to be able to inspire people, and ultimately kind of my trajectory where I'm going in the future is like, that's the person I want to become. Because like I told you earlier, in my upbringing, I've seen a lot of things, and so I don't want the same thing to happen again. It's like a cycle, and we don't want to repeat the same cycle that I've seen growing up with my friends
right,
in the childhood, the things that I've kind of grew up in. And so just being able to share a different light and talk about entrepreneurship mindset, like you talked about, growth mindset, fixed mindset, and
yeah,
having that abundance mindset ultimately, and all these things too. Like, people would tell me like, how do you get so much? You're only 25. How do you got so much? Because I sit a lot with people who are older than me, people who are like, they are 45, 50, whatever it is, and they'll be like, Hattie, you got a lot of wisdom. I'm like, man, it's just things that I've been able to go through. It's just not like I didn't read this stuff on a book. I just went through it,
you lived,
and then
yeah,
I had to go through it. And for me, it started when I was young, but because I never looked at it like, I never wanted to settle for just less. I've always looked at, I have to try different things. I have to be in different opportunities and just really go for it. And so I think you don't really learn from just like, just reading or whatever. You learn from actually practically going out there, whether it's hustling on the streets, whether it's going through the ups and downs. And I think that's what people forget nowadays. It's like they'll see
Right.
the all the good stuff, and it's like, no,
Yeah,
you have to go out there and make it happen, man. You know what I mean? Yeah, my
definitely.
mentor Bryce Kaminsky says you don't get lucky at home, so you got to get up and go make it happen. You know what I mean? So
Definitely. No, I think that
yeah,
resonates a lot. There's That's awesome. Hi, thanks so much for making time to be on here. Yeah, we got the handles and stuff. We'll include that in the bio here. So, listener, you can check and follow Hanny out on the links below. And yeah, thanks for making time. Excited to continue to follow your journey. And if I ever need a cell phone fixed, I'm coming to you.
there you
Ultimately,
go, man. No,
yeah.
thank you so much, Stephen, for having me on, man. I got one question for you, bro, before you wrap up,
Oh,
man.
okay.
Yeah, I like what you're doing, bro. You got about 100 podcasts in. I think you're doing the reps 100%.
Hmm.
Someone who is brand new to podcast, what do you think the key is? What's the key to making to doing more and just kind of how you do? Because I think you got a whole production set up and you got different things lined up. So what? Because I'm well, I have my own podcast, but I'm working on like producing more and doing different things.
For sure. I think it's, well, kind of like you just mentioned there, reps. Like we got into this thing kind of by accident. It was to figure out how to make podcasts so we could help make podcasts for other people. And
Nice.
initially it was to do 9 podcasts. And then I saw a short clip actually on Instagram or TikTok or something, and it was explaining that 90% of people don't make more than 3 episodes. The 10% that make more than 3 episodes only make 21. And then that's like, then you're in the top 1%. I
Mm,
don't know if that's changed or adjusted, but let's pretend that that still exists to this day. So then the next goal was to make 22. And truly it was just to figure out how to help make podcast for the folks, which we do through the marketing company. And then we, try to help spread messages around local businesses and other people I meet on the journey through our own podcast and production here. It doesn't require, I mean, you have a mic and you got headphones there and a camera. That's everything that you need. I think it's just consistency. I treat it a lot like, and this would be related to, I follow you on your social media about, health is wealth and staying in shape and stuff. But, the biggest results are seen through consistency there. And I think that's where we've seen the biggest consistency in terms of production and continuing to post and share people's stories. So I think it's really simple. I think it's maybe overthought by a lot of
mm,
folks. But I think consistency ultimately is the biggest winner there for us. And, find, if you can find it more niched, ultimately, like a lot of our clients see more success than we do because they have more specific topics. We cover a lot of business and kind of like general topics I find interesting. But I think if you can do that in the podcast world, you can have a lot of wins. Depends on your, goals at the end of it without getting too down a rabbit hole. But I'd say ultimately just keep going because, doing endurance sports and stuff like that, it's just that mindset of not giving up. So whatever you're doing, just continue to do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%, bro. I agree with you, man. Consistency for the win.
Yeah, it really is. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
100%, brother. Yeah,
that's my thoughts there.
yeah.
Anyways, well, hopefully that helps. We'll chat for a minute after the episode here, but thanks so much for making time. And yeah, thanks for listening.
I appreciate it, Steven.